Good afternoon. Mr. Ali McNabb, Pro-Chancellor, University of Technology, Jamaica. Dr. Kevin Brown, President, University of Technology. Mr. Andrew Lee, Chief Executive Officer, eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. Professor Sean Thorpe, Dean, Faculty, Engineering and Computing at the University of Technology. Dr. Balvin Thorpe, Vice Dean, Faculty of Engineering and Computing. Ms. Marion Brown, Registrar at the University of Technology. Ms. Terrian Thomas Gale, Chief Education Officer Acting from the Ministry of Education and Youth, my apologies. And Ms. Tanya Graham, Program Director, Computer Network and Security at the University of Technology. We also have with us, of course, participants who participated in the data protection training. We also have members from eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. And also we have, our friends from the Jamaica Information Service. Good evening, everyone. I am Kimono Gordon, Communications Manager at eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. With that being said, I now invite us to stand for the national anthem. Please be seated. I now invite Mrs. Dorothy Thompson, and she is the Implementation Specialist at eLearning Jamaica Company Limited, to, of course, lead us to the throne of grace.
Good afternoon, everyone. Would you mind standing? I notice we have been sitting for a while. If you can, you may stand. Let us pray. Almighty God, Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, we thank you for this day. We thank you for health and strength and journeying mercies, especially for those who have traveled from far to be here today, and for all those who are gathered also online. Today we gather to celebrate achievement of our educators and for the wisdom and the knowledge that you have given to them, and for those who have been instrumental in conceptualizing this cybersecurity training course. With the advent of technology, Lord, we know there have been many implications surrounding it. We have the social media that has taken flight with information all over the place at our fingertips, many of us just a click away. These information, Lord, and data need to be protected in some way. And not only the data and the information, but Lord, we also pray for those vulnerable persons who at times are portrayed in the social media. We ask you, Lord, that you will help us, that we will protect them physically as well as the data. And Lord, at this time, we ask that you will go before us, guide us, and protect us as those persons who have completed, that they collect their certificates, and that they will in turn use the information given to work for the betterment of our country, of education. Thank you for those who are also online, and we ask that as we complete this exercise, that you will guide us and protect us as we go in our respective places. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. All right, I know we are behind time, so we're just going to keep it moving, ladies and gentlemen. So I invite Mr. Kevin Brown, President of the University of Technology, to, of course, come and give his remarks.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, Kimona Gordon, Communications Manager, eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. I also wish to recognize Mr. Andrew Lee, Chief Executive Officer for eLearning Jamaica Company Limited, and our friend and partner. Other members of the eLearning Jamaica Company Limited who are here, representatives from the Ministry of Education and Youth, educators from institutions across Jamaica. Welcome to UTech. Professor Sean Thorpe, our Dean for the Faculty of Engineering and Computing, Dr. Balvin Thorpe, Vice Dean for the Faculty of Engineering and Computing, and I can see other members, the heads of school, program directors from that faculty. Welcome. Members of faculties and colleges across the university, staff members, members of the media, other invited guests. Good afternoon. I was tempted to ask you all to stand for my welcoming remarks, but I see you're well awake. It's a Friday afternoon, so I'm gonna, you can remain seated, and I'll keep it as brief as I can. But I wish to extend a warm welcome to the University of Technology. If it's your first time, special welcome to our Papine campus. It is indeed a pleasure for me to extend welcome on this important occasion. I join in congratulating the officers from schools across Jamaica who have completed the required training to carry out your duties as data protection officers within your respective teaching and learning institutions across the island. So can we have a round of applause to congratulate these new data protection officers? I can see some proud smiles in the crowd. I don't know if it's filled with joy and trepidation at the same time, because this is a new thing for Jamaica. I resided in the UK for 2 decades where they've been on that journey of implementing data protection across all the entities there, and it is indeed a journey, and you are at the start of this journey for Jamaica. So you're going to be the pioneers, right? So it is fitting that this award ceremony is being held on the 1st of December as the promulgation of the Data Protection Act 2020 comes into effect today. UTech Jamaica is pleased to have led the initiative to train over 100 data protection officers under the National Data Protection Implementation Training Program for schools. This was done in partnership with the Ministry of Education and Youth and facilitated by eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. Now, we're expecting our minister to arrive at any moment, and she and her team at the ministry have selected the right place, which is here at UTech, where we have the right expertise for the design and implementation of the training curriculum, which was provided by our knowledgeable faculty and staff within the Faculty of Engineering and Computing. The training, yes, you can clap. That's our proud head of school for computing, Mr. David White there, leading with the applause. Thank you, David. The training curriculum was consistent with the university's own curriculum in data protection and cybersecurity, which is offered within the School of Computing and Information Technology. So if any of you newly minted data protection officers want to further your studies, and extend it to cybersecurity, Perhaps you could speak to David about how you could matriculate into a course at UTech, either at the undergraduate or master's level. And I'm sure our dean has plans for short courses as well. The curriculum here is also consistent with the ministry's mandate to ensure that education stakeholders are prepared for the new legislation which comes into force today. UTech Jamaica facilitation of this training program for an important era of national life is in alignment with the university's mission, and our mandate is to positively impact Jamaica, the wider Caribbean, and elsewhere through high-quality learning opportunities, research, value-added solutions to government, industry, and communities. Collaborations such as this training program between academia and industry continues to be a win-win model for Jamaica's development. The university continues to stand ready to lend expertise and practical training on such future initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, teachers, instructors, newly minted data protection officers, I want to remind you that the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the move for the adoption of existing and emerging ICT technologies to facilitate continuity in teaching and learning across Jamaica, especially on our campus here at UTech. Now, the post-COVID-19 situation is that digital technology is even more pervasive than before, with everyone now connected through one or more devices. I can see a tablet here, for example. We use our mobile phones for pretty much everything, along with other devices. So in this information age, we put a lot of data about ourselves in this digital space every day, whether it is through emails, search engines, or social media. And by the way, I should warn you that when the minister comes in, make sure you're smiling, because she likes to take pictures and post them on where? So if anyone who's following the minister, where does she like to post pictures? IG, Facebook. I follow her on Instagram. She likes Instagram a lot, right? So she's putting out data all the time, right? Her data, other people's data, your pictures. But she's not the only one. We all do it, right? So the landscape has changed. And so we know that so much now depends on the protection of our data. And of course, issues of theft, misuse, or corruption of our personal data can have very far-reaching effects. So in this context, we recognize the critical need for educational institutions, educators, and in fact, everyone to be fully aware of matters concerning cybersecurity and data protection of personal information. As educators, we are obligated to safeguard the data that we collect about our students, their parents, and the many varied stakeholders we interface with in the service of education. Here at UTech, we have been committed to the process of readiness for the legislative changes and for Jamaica's continuing transition to a digital economy. We are particularly keen on ensuring a very strong data compliance infrastructure within the framework of ongoing plans for a digital transformation of the business and education processes at the university. Now, preparation and action steps for the new legislation and data protection compliance at UTech have been led over the last several months by an established data protection office. No, working on it, Prof. Thorpe. And we have a data protection officer. It was something we had to do very quickly, and we have recruited an excellent young man who's doing a fantastic job, and he reports directly to me, right? So we put a premium on data protection, and it's right from the top of the institution. So we have fully embraced the coming of this new Data Protection Act, and we stand ready to be a further support to the government as the implementation phase goes into high gear. So I want to just end by congratulating you again, the newly minted data protection officers. We have some brand new crispy certificates for you. And I want to give you my best wishes as you start this journey. I know the UTech team, the e-learning team are going to be here for you, so you're not alone, as not just you, but Jamaica goes on this journey of improving our data protection standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. You know, I was just standing there and it came to mind that what is happening here today, it's a momentous occasion, simply because you are the first set of data protection officers to actually go through and complete the course. And I can only assume, how rigorous that training was for you. So you deserve a round of applause for that. All right, we now invite Mr. Andrew Lee, Chief Executive Officer for eLearning Jamaica Company Limited, to come and give his remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Gordon, our colleague at eLearning, who arranges and plans all these events along with UTech and other institutions that we associate ourselves with. Before I get into my brief remarks, I just want to acknowledge a number of persons here. But I want to first say congratulations to our graduates. Pro-Chancellor Ali McNabb, Registrar Ms. Mariam Brown, Dr. Brown, our president who just addressed us. And I heard Dr. Brown, he went on a sales speech. I don't know if you noticed that. But it's important for any CEO, any head of an entity or school, to sell your organization. So I can't fault you for taking the time to do that. Professor Thorpe, the man who we engaged and started out this journey about a year ago. And here we are today, December 1, the actual implementation date, and we're proud that we made it. I know there's a way to go, but, we did make it. Dr. Thorpe, another Thorpe, Vice Dean, Faculty of Engineering, and somebody who I've known for a while, as well as Sean. I've known Sean for a while as well. Mr. Thomas Gale, our Chief Education Officer. So happy to see you. Can you stand so that I can see you? Because a lot of people don't know you, She oversees all of the education, sector. Miss Tanya Graham, Program Director here at UTech. All the participants who I recognize who are graduating today, our other colleagues from the Ministry of Education and Youth, colleagues again from the University of Technology, members of the media, but of course my e-learning family. Thank you so much for the support that you continue to give and for working so diligently to make this day a reality in collaboration with UTech. So, get into my remarks here. So again, I'm really, really happy to be here, to celebrate with this, our first cohort. And of course, there's a lot more work that we'll be doing in collaboration with UTech to ensure that more persons are trained in data protection and everything relating to cybersecurity and everything to do with privacy. This data protection journey with UTech and the Ministry of Education began about a year ago. I reached out to Minister Williams. I wrote to her, actually, and I remember her getting back to us pretty quickly to say, yes, she's in support of this. And we held our first online session, sensitization session, to include Professor Thorpe, Minister Williams, then acting CEO, now PS Troop, down at the Ministry of Education, and it was broadcast or streamed live. So that's where we started. And it just makes today so much more significant, the actual day where the law actually comes into effect. But I say this to say, and Minister Williams, in her absence, has really been extremely supportive of the work that we have embarked on with respect to data protection. You'll recall that she was the minister who led this, piloted this through Parliament, and actually got the law enacted. Fast forward today, we now have persons graduating. Congratulations again, graduates. So, as we celebrate this occasion, we must recognize the dedication and commitment of you who you have diligently undergone this intensive online course. On behalf of eLearning, I extend again my congratulations. Now, we know that the implementation of the General Data Protection Regulations, that's the GDPR in Europe, it served as a catalyst for countries worldwide, including Jamaica, of course, to enact similar laws and regulations governing data protection. With over 1,000 schools across Jamaica, along with the Ministry of Education itself, the central aspect of the Ministry of Education, we took on this responsibility, for ensuring that this journey of preparing persons to become data protection officers, and not just data protection officers, but to sensitize our principals and all the stakeholders what this act means. And we're also working for transparency purpose, and so that we all know, we work with the University of the West Indies as well, and so far we have exposed maybe over, Ms. Bailey, you'll remind me, maybe about 300 or more principals have been exposed to the matter of data protection and the importance of this as it relates to the education sector. The collaboration between eLearning, UTech, and the Ministry of Education stands as a clear indication of our commitment, not only of eLearning, not only to infuse technology within schools, but also building technical capacity. That's something that we're extremely passionate about. So, as you will recall, this course went on for about 3 weeks online. I did join at some points, so I'm wondering if there's a certificate for me. But I want to remind us that data protection is not merely a legal obligation, it's a moral imperative to safeguard the sensitive data that's entrusted to us within our educational institutions. The responsibility rests with us to ensure that this data is handled with utmost care, respecting the privacy and confidentiality of every individual associated with our schools. So, as we celebrate the achievements of our graduates today, we recognize that your role as trailblazers in upholding the principles of data protection. Your knowledge and expertise will not only ensure compliance, but will foster a culture of responsible data handling, setting precedents for best practices in our educational landscape in Jamaica going forward. I commend you again, graduates, for your perseverance. I know the course was hectic. I know it was rigorous, but I listened in and you participated On the final day, I know you did some presentations, and I was really, really impressed with the quality and high standard of the presentations that you made. So I know that there is obviously more work to be done by us, and we stand willing to work with UTech, other institutions, the ministry, to ensure that our schools, are further prepared. So in closing, I extend on behalf of e-learning our gratitude to UTech, particularly Prof. Thorpe. Clap him now. For this collaboration, and I also commend the Ministry of Education, and the Minister in particular for her unwavering support for the work we do at e-learning and for ensuring that the data protection rollout can be as smooth as it should be. Finally, as we embark on this new era of data protection, let us remember that our commitment to safeguarding sensitive information serves as a cornerstone in building trust, and that is just so important. Once our data is compromised, you lose trust in the organization, and we don't want that. So that's, again, very important for our education sector. Congratulations again, graduates. I wish you all continued success in this journey. It's a journey of 1,000 miles, but it begins today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. And just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we are streaming live on our YouTube platform at eLearningJA and also on GIS at WatchJIS. So I am looking at the comment and I'm seeing a lot of congratulations. So Ewan Simpson, is he here? So I'm seeing somebody saying congratulations to you. Aldane Montague. Somebody's also saying congratulations. So please, ladies and gentlemen, invite, your family members, friends to go on over and, just type something nice in the chat. With that being said, I'm now going to invite Professor Sean Thorpe, and of course, he is the Dean of Faculty of Engineering at the Faculty of Engineering and Computing. And ladies and gentlemen, he's one of the brainchilds behind this entire project. So please, give him a round of applause as he comes to give you an overview of the project.
A pleasant good afternoon. I promise you this will not be a lecture. Observing the required protocols, President Brown, pleasant good afternoon. Pro-Chancellor, afternoon. Registrar, CEO of eLearning Jamaica, my dear friend, Mr. Lee, all members of the community within eLearning and the Ministry of Education. I was going to say minister, right? Yes. CEO of the Ministry of Education, a pleasant good afternoon to you as well. All protocols observed, my very good friends from various schools across the country. Regions 1 to 7, did I get that right? Regions 1 to 7. The opportunity of standing here today on December 1, 2023, I would say might have been a coincidence because we had planned for this event way in advance of this time. We should have had it sometime in early November. However, the schedules did not afford for us to be here until today. So the fate would have it, or somebody could say carpe diem, you have to seize the day. I made a few notes which I'm going to share about how the program actually manifests itself. And I sincerely hope for those who are here in person, as well as those who are online, have the benefit of understanding what exactly obtained with respect of the program that we undertook in 3 weeks. But first, please put your hands together. A round of applause to all the graduates here. I do have the dubious distinction of setting very hard assignments. So when students actually get an A in my course, it is very well deserved. I want you to clap yourself again. This class did not get less than 90% in the assessments. Let's start there. There might have been a group or two who had some little issues and they had to work through the logistics and get back to me with parts of a submission, but everyone had to demonstrate what they had to do. There were 2 assessments that were provided for this course. Mr. Lee had the benefit of coming on the last assessment, while the mid-assessment in the 3 weeks would have been the first assessment. So we did 2 assessments, including active class participation. Now this group actively participated. The enthusiasm was almost on steroids, if I could call it that. I found that the topic of data protection was not only significant by way of what it meant to the country and the outcomes, considering that you had a $2 million fine, that you hear, $2 million fine for breaches in the act pertinent to these fees. And you look at section 16 or section 20 under the particulars, you will see the references for same. And of course now the regulation, the working draft regulation is now available on the Office of Information Commissioner's website, which I looked at up to last evening. Now with that said, I would say that we could keep doing this course over and over, considering that things are going to continuously change. So let me give you an overview, ladies and gentlemen, as to what we have to cover within the course as an outcome. And I'm going to keep it high level and then just sort of give you some logistics around the context. The course introduced itself specifically to defining what we really meant by data protection, recognizing the need to understand what is personal identifiable information specific to the situation here in Jamaica and how you treat with your own data locally and having to deal with data cross-border. So we spent time defining the data protection as a foundation set of terminologies and spent time looking at the 8 principles related to the act that we must be compliant with. We had done several case studies pertinent to the act, pertinent to schools in particular, because while we don't want to take tails out of school, as the saying would go, the curriculum in the university under cybersecurity and data protection would look at very vast cases across various sectors. This time around we had to focus on schools so that my teachers, my officers from the ministry can relate exactly to how this affected their working environment. So we started there and developed specific case studies around the requirement of what personal identifiable information meant in schools. So for example, we would look at when students' grades are changed, or we would look at cases where grades may become missing and it ends up somewhere where it should not end up, or teachers' information ending up where it should not end up, the implications under the law or the legislation, and who would be held accountable. Very specifically, we looked at the basics of data protection pertinent to policy design and development coming out of the class sessions. And I know some persons even contacted me after the training saying, boy, they didn't realize they did so much work in retrospect. But we had to look at the policy design on the data protection. How do you design a data protection policy for an organization? And the data protection policy is a very important policy document for any organization today in Jamaica because it demonstrates very specifically how you seek to comply with the Act. The document, in terms of its preparation, would have been a draft as class exercises. And please note the data protection policy document is an inward-facing document for all schools. Of course, I'm saying this for all organizations in Jamaica who has to comply with the Act. So the organizations have to have a policy. So we have to look at draft exercises relating to what obtains in the schools and how, as an incoming data protection officer, one of your roles is to ensure that within that institution, the policies are adequately prepared. We also had, in the context of the course, to look very specifically at privacy statement designs. So privacy statement designs speak articulately to the outward-facing documents of an institution. What I really mean by that, what do you put on the website as of today of your schools? What does the Ministry of Education and Youth put on its website as it relates to how it handles personal identifiable information of its stakeholders? In the course, we made sure to clearly distinguish who is a data subject, who is a data controller, in terms of the data controller being that institution like MOEY or UTEC, who has to indicate the purposeful use or means for which the data is going to be applied to a community, and then the various departments and units that have to engage the use of that data being the data processors. But at the end of the day, the real reason why you have the Data Protection Act is to support civil advocacy, which is for who you call the data subjects. So we went through the course in that context to relate to the fact that students and parents and teachers are data subjects and they have rights. And in the context of having those rights, we have to ensure that the data is accurate. We have to ensure that the data presented is also available at all times to the stakeholders and must be encrypted in some cases to ensure that you maintain that privacy. In the same course, outside of the policy development exercise, we spent some time doing what is called classification and mapping of the data within the organization. And within schools, there's a lot of data. That classification and mapping within schools, we actually had to look at it very specifically to how the EU applies it under the General Data Protection Regulation. So the mapping exercises would see and be presented as a dashboard using tables and workflows. And I saw that from primary school to high school, regardless of whether a teacher was in technology or not, they could relate to the content of how that would impact their schools as an incoming data protection officer. Do you remember this? No. Do you remember? It's one more time for assessment, but this time this one is bonus. Is this correct? Yes, you remember well. So the data classification and mapping exercises to look exactly at what the school has as personal identifiable data and what doesn't constitute personal identifiable data, and the type of measures that must be put in place to show up the safety and security of this data for its various stakeholders. Now, specific to this course, one learning point, just in giving you this overview, is that the data protection policy is not the only policy that the schools will have to put out there. The entire country, as a matter of fact, and I'm here streaming live, right? The entire country, as a matter of fact, in addition to putting in place a data protection policy, one of the requirements under the design of the data protection policy is that you must have a set of other congruent policies that match. So all your HR policies, your IT security policies, in terms of how you access data, how you store the data. Today, when you came here, they're usually used to be a measure where we collect the registration of persons coming into a venue. For those who came in, you realize we had none. And that was deliberate, because if I did that, I could have already been in breach. I could have been in breach today, for sure, unless we exercise the principle of having a consent form available to say whether or not you would like to enter this venue or not. It's either we make it available in a physical format or we make it available to you in a digital format. But because I know all of you coming here today were good friends and we've been talking all week. Hold on. We've been talking all week on WhatsApp. I actually sort of engendered trust in the fact that everyone who is here this afternoon actually is in the right place. Am I correct? Yes, I'm correct, right? But going forward, what it means within the school system, in other words, how we collect data is a very, very important requirement. So we can't simply collect data without due care of ensuring that there is consent and for the option for persons to opt in and to opt out of that data collection process. All our officers here get that well, because I'm sure in the stream of the classes, persons went back to their schools afterwards. I had people even calling me from some of these schools, asking for some clarifications as to how their organization should operate thereafter. In concluding the basics of the data mapping and classification exercise, we look very specifically at things like impact assessment design. So a data protection impact assessment, which is called your DPIA, indicates within the schools where are we to likely have a breach before today. Well, we were doing this October 9 to October 25. So that timeline was a very important way to allow all of you to check back in your schools based on those class exercises to ensure that your schools were not likely to be in breach. What did you realize? They don't want to say that on air. I have to be careful. It is likely that we could have a lot of breach, because when we started doing that evaluation, the courtesy of note was that if for every transactional breach, and I hope the commissioner is hearing me and the stakeholders who lead this, if every transactional breach could be $2 million, when persons talk about 4% of your business revenue being wiped out, in Jamaican terms, when we talk about $2 million for each breach and the amount of student records you have in the school system, the millions add up very quickly to the point that it could literally close down the schools, right? And we do know that schools are a measured organization in terms of budgets, and like many other organizations that have to measure their budgets, the required safeguards that need to be in place have to be well understood. So the impact assessment studies were very important. We did that as it relates to what internally would happen in the organization. But we did another activity called privacy impact assessments, which meant how did the third-party stakeholders outside of the schools who you had to deal with, like canteen concessionaire services who probably provide to schools, or you integrate a new piece of technology within the school which you buy from a third-party vendor. We had to look at how that would impact the schools as well. Significantly, it also demonstrated that the sources of where you could have breaches would have been significant across the school system. This was followed by breach assessment studies and case assessments, and these breach assessments were data protection breach assessments, where you look within the organization, which is inward-facing, and then we look outside the organization, which is outward-facing. So the privacy breach assessments would demonstrate what are the type of breaches a school did in that program, and you have well-trained officers ready to handle the charge of data protection within the ministry. But I was making the point, and quite timely the minister came in, right? The draft data protection policy, as well as the draft privacy statements, have been shared with your office. You may have seen the mail, but you may not have had time to read it. But Mr. Lee acknowledged the receipt and what it meant going forward. Because one of the concerns coming out of the class activities is that each member in this group would now be figuring out, should I be going back into my respective school to create a data protection policy for each school? The recommendation is that by making the suggestion of drafts that complement whatever the ministry already has, both in terms of the draft data protection policy and the privacy statement notices, they can be used under conformed circumstances to support all schools across all 1,000 or more schools. I don't have the exact number, but I know you have a lot of schools. 1,010. Thank you so much, Minister. 1,010 schools. The task will be significant to be creating that across so many schools. So to complement what the ministry currently has, they now have draft policies for the data protection, and they have draft privacy statements, which would now be taken under further consideration by a policy committee internal to the Ministry of Education and Youth to actually get them ratified. Because one of the requirements about policies is that they have no use unless they are ratified. And only ratified policies represent truth documents, as only ratified policies represent truth documents, as we have discussed in this course of study. So those are outcomes. Give yourselves a round of applause. It could only have been drafted, Minister, by listening first to what the teachers had to say and the various educational officers had to say about elements of the school system, such that I made the point earlier that these policies need to be complemented by other policies within the school, which now represent new opportunities as it relates to development. So let me tell you what I think are some of the tangible next steps outside of the draft policies that have been presented to the schools. The next steps, very specifically and very succinct, are: one, we need to have a policy review program within this National Data Protection Drive. This policy review program would allow the ministry to engage. Where do you have draft policies not yet ratified? What policies still need to be updated? And to ensure that they are aligned with the data protection policy. Very important requirement, because the data protection policy is a truth document. And that truth document is one where all other policies must demonstrate that they are also created and available within the schools. So that's the next deliberate step. Now, we are not behind. As a matter of fact, we are ahead of the game, because many organizations locally are still grappling with even drafting the data protection policy, including privacy statements. But a policy review program is what I would recommend next. And in addition to a policy review program is what you call a policy implementation program. Please note the careful use of terms. The policy implementation program will be consistent with the fact that after you have developed all these policies that support guidance to how you regulate and manage your schools under the Data Protection Act, you have to ensure that these policies are working within the schools. So the policy implementation program means you will have training and awareness sessions, which is what data protection officers would do, and privacy officers, because complementing the data protection officers are privacy analysts or officers. And very specifically, that policy implementation program, as one of the outcomes under the curriculum, would now guide exactly long-term how schools sustain themselves, that they do not have a breach under the Act. In other words, the policy implementation program goes in and ensures that all policies are continuously monitored and engaged, such that if the Office of the Information Commissioner comes to any school, they can see very clearly how the schools would have been implementing all tenets of the various policies that would be in place. Now, this argument, although we won't want to take TASE out of school, it is also applicable to every organization in Jamaica who now has to implement the data protection. So give yourselves another round of applause. Private sector, Minister, I don't want to tell private sector to come and take your educators away from you. You want to ensure that they are part of the system. So this concludes my very short presentation. Usually, right? Very short presentation. I do not have any intentions of spending more than 10 minutes. But did I spend 10 minutes? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Thorpe. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, we have in our midst the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education and Youth. So please, again, make her welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right, thank you for waiting patiently. I was actually at another function trying to get buy-in of our employees at the central office, those in Canewood in particular, on our trend campaign, Transforming Education for... Awesome. So that was on, and but I know I really wanted to be here as well to just talk with you a little bit about the data protection for educators and to be in your presence as you are awarded certificates, Mr. Lee? Yes. All right, for data protection. So I'm sure during the course of the time you learned about who is a data protection officer and your duties. But let me, before I begin, acknowledge Ms. Kimona Gordon, Communications Manager from eLearning. Dr. Kevin Brown, President of UTech Jamaica. Thank you, President, for collaborating with us on this very important initiative. I see Mr. McNabb as well, a member of the council. And beside him, registrar, yes, so the big guns are out here. Sorry, I shouldn't say that word, gun, right? And of course, we have our CEO acting, Chief Education Officer acting, Mrs. Terry-Ann Thomas Gale. 2 double-barrel names, right? Yes. We have as well, you heard from Professor Sean Thorpe, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Computing. Let me acknowledge Ms. Dorothy Thompson, Implementation Specialist at eLearning, and of course, Mr. Andrew Lee, Chief Executive Officer of eLearning. I also want to tender apologies for Dr. Troop. I left her at the Trend event, so she could not be here this afternoon. But let me say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here on a Friday afternoon. I will make it worth your while. So it was in 2020 that we passed the Data Protection Act in Jamaica. During the time when we were deliberating on the act, we felt that it was so new that we would allow time for all entities to get ready. And so we allowed 2 years. And as a matter of fact, today, December 1, the act comes into force. But yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that he was going to allow 6 months more for companies, entities to get themselves together so that when the act comes into force, they will be ready for it. So what is data protection? Data protection really speaks to the personal data of all of us, all Jamaicans. Currently, your data exists all over the place. You have no control, no idea who is accessing your personal data. The entities that collect it, they have no obligation to you to tell you who has accessed it, to even give you the data if you ask for it, even though it's your personal data. So we had to create a regime with laws, with penalties, with rules, with standards, to say how personal data should be collected, how it should be managed, how it should be stored, and to describe new rights for all of us in that regime. And if I step back, you may ask, okay, but how did we decide we're going to do a data protection regime? If you remember, back in 2017, 2018, the government of the day embarked on a path to ensure that we have a national ID. Right? So they created laws that said all of us in Jamaica it was mandated for all of us to have a national ID. The law went to Parliament. It was passed, but it was challenged by the opposition. So the opposition took it to court. The courts decided that the mandatory nature of it was, against whatever they decided it was against. And literally, the court threw out that entire piece of legislation. And so, as they say in Jamaica, one of the things the court said was that the government was going to be collecting or handling a lot of personal data, and there's no data protection regime in Jamaica. So we had to wheel and come again, because I was part of the government then, that administration then. So we had to wheel and come again. And so the first step we had to take before we could think of coming back with new legislation around the national ID was to ensure that we pass legislation that would create data protection regime. And we did. I just happened to have been the minister at the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Technology at the time. I have to give credit where credit is due. There was a lot of work that was already done on the legislation when I got there, but we had to take it through a joint select committee of Parliament to look, to put things together, to get the law into Parliament. And so the Data Protection Act is one of the pieces of legislation that I piloted through Parliament. And so if you hear me kind of waxing eloquently about it, it's because of all the hours that we logged trying to get it done. So the Data Protection Act calls for an information commissioner to be set up, and we have such a commissioner in place. It calls for the Office of the Information Commissioner to be set up with persons in it that will ensure that all entities are abiding by the legislation. All entities that collect private data, personal data, will be known as data controllers. They have to put in their entities systems that will enable them to know who is accessing your data. They have to be able to respond to you if you ask them to see what data they have on you or about you, and they have to do it within a certain time frame. So all of that is going to have to happen. The training of all of you as data protection officers is part of that. All of us in Jamaica, in that data protection regime, will be known as data subjects. Sounds like science fiction, right? Data subjects. We're all data subjects. And the information that is being collected, the personal information that is about us, we will have ownership of that. So, therefore, the legislation creates new rights for all of us. New rights for access to your personal data, meaning you can ask the data controller and they have to let you know. You can ask who has accessed my data. So if you go to the bank and you ask who has accessed my account, they are obligated to tell you, and they have to tell you why. Of course, people at the bank will need to look at your account and so forth, but those persons would have had permission to be able to interact with your data. The only exception is for security reasons. So you can't ask the police what data they have on you, right? You can't ask them, but I think you can pretty much ask anybody else what they have on you. There are penalties for entities that collect the data and they have breaches. All breaches have to be reported to the Information Commissioner. So it's really serious legislation. Additionally, not only because nationally we wanted to have our national ID and to ensure that we have the legislative environment, but when you look around the world as well, there are many countries that have a data protection regime. Across Europe, they have a pretty strong data protection regime, and we looked at that when we were putting together Jamaica's. And what we discover is that countries with strong data protection regime, they are looking at other countries to see what it is that they have in place, especially if their citizens do business with those countries, right? So you can imagine, just to give you an example, there are many European tourists that come to Jamaica, right? The hotels collect personal data on those, your credit card, your name, all kinds of data on those citizens. So the European government is going to look at Jamaica to say, what kind of is your system robust? What kind of protection you have for this data that you're collecting on our citizens? And so that's another reason we had to move as well to ensure that we have this protection for our citizens. So this is an important endeavor that we're undertaking. We have to, by law, otherwise there are serious penalties for us. So I know you're here on a Friday afternoon, and that tells me you're taking this seriously. The education sector, well, I should say, I was invited to speak at another function on data protection, and the moderator, when it came my time, she said, well, after I spoke and I sat down, she said, I was wondering why they invited the Minister of Education to talk about data protection. But it was only after I spoke about the education system and the mountain of data that we collect in the system that she realized that the education system is probably the largest in terms of the data that it collects. Think about your schools. You collect information on all the children that are there, their name, their address, their parents' name, their age, their immunization record, their grades, all kinds of personal data, right? And it's just stored in a paper file and anybody can access it and so on. We need for it to be protected and for people, for our citizens in Jamaica to begin to think of the valuableness of their personal data, right? All of you, I'm sure, have your TikTok, your Facebook, your IG, your X account, and you put up your data on it, and they know what you're watching and all of this that they're collecting about you. And you feel happy because you don't have to pay for it, it's free. But guess what? Somebody's collecting this very valuable information about you, and they are aggregating and they're selling that data, and they're making billions of dollars of something that you haven't even thought was important, your own personal data. So, Mr. Lee, I want to thank eLearning. I want to thank UTech for this collaboration, for ensuring that the education sector is out ahead of everybody else, probably, in terms, yes. In terms of ensuring that we'll be ready when the act comes into being in the next 6 months' time. And for everybody to really take this seriously because of the penalties associated with it if we don't. And the Ministry of Education would have to pay whatever the cost is that the Information Commissioner says that we have to pay for breaches of the data protection. So whenever you think about your personal data, think in terms of this is my data. I have rights over my personal data. Yes, you might be the entity collecting this data, but this law has given me certain rights over that data. It will be a total mind shift once this begins to work and once we begin to become more aware about the rights that this new law gives us. Treasure it. You will begin to see the unfolding of all of this in Jamaica and across the world as well, and the importance in the technology age in which we're in, that we understand that we need to protect our personal data. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's one thing that I can say, and I agree with you, are absolutely trendsetters at this point in time, So, again, give yourselves a round of applause for that. You are indeed trendsetters. All right. On the program, ladies and gentlemen, we have remarks from students, educators. Of course, they're just going to tell us what the workshop, what the training has been like for them over the 3 weeks that you were engaged. So I am going to ask those persons to of course, make their way to the podium at this point in time. And while they're doing that, persons who are supposed to, tell us what your experience was like, waiting. Of course, we still have some persons who are, congratulating you on the YouTube platform, the space. So, Christoph Johnson, he's saying congratulations to Mr. Campbell. Who is Mr. Campbell? Ah, Mr. Campbell, there you go. All right. Jody Ann Francis, she's saying, so proud of you, Mr. Francis. Who is Mr. Francis? Mr. Francis. The students who are supposed to, they're not here? No, man, the student or students who are to, give us their feedback on the training. Yes, please. And as you make your way, Marlene Denny, she's saying congratulations to Denise Edwards. Who is Denise Edwards? Wonderful. Rosemary Steer, she's also saying, let's hear it for Miss Denise Edwards. Right, okay. Denise, you're a popular man. All right, gentlemen, please come.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, let me begin by acknowledging our specially invited guests. Before I begin with the specially invited guests, Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Kimona Gordon, Communications Manager, eLearning Jamaica, Honorable Favour Williams, MP, Minister of Education and Youth, Mrs. Terry Ann Thomas Gale, Acting Chief Education Officer, Pro-Chancellor Ali McNabb, Mr. Andrew Lee, Chief Executive Officer of eLearning, and Dr. Kevin Brown, President, UTech Jamaica. And finally, or last but not least, Professor Sean Thorpe, Dean, Faculty of Engineering and Computing, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow awardees, a pleasant good afternoon or good evening to you all. Now, first of all, I would like to say that it's really a pleasant surprise to see everyone here, to see the faces behind the names that we have grown close to over the during the 3-week course that we have. Now, this training session has indeed taken us by storm. We can remember when we were first asked to join in and how suddenly it all occurred, and especially when we perhaps asked the question, when will be our first class? And some of us were told this evening. It was really a shock to many of us, especially those of us who had plans already made for the week, for the weeks, and especially for that Heroes Weekend that we had made definite plans for. But it was a very challenging 3 weeks. I think in speaking to Professor Thorpe about it, it is usually a 3-month course condensed into 3 weeks. And now to give you some background, that 3-month course, it's 3 hours per week. But we did it in 9 hours per week for 3 weeks. So that puts into perspective how well we handled that course that was given to us. Now, our passing, as Professor Thorpe said, this training and sensitization session is evidence of how well we were trained. So I'd like for us to give Professor Thorpe a round of applause for accomplishing that task so well. Now, for us on the ground, having been sensitized and trained as data protection officers, I like to consider us as gatekeepers. We have a huge task ahead of us. We are living in a digital age. We have lived in that age for quite some time now. We may have been lagging behind in certain areas, but as a sector, we are ahead, especially with the implementation of the Data Protection Act and the training that we have all gone through. We can indeed say that we are ahead. Now, moving forward, after being exposed, our task is a big one. It really puts into perspective the need for best practices to be implemented. So practices such as digital archiving, offsite backup, data encryption, multi-factor authentication, these are no longer buzzwords, but rather these are things that we will have to make a routine practice of going forward. So there needs to be a paradigm shift of sorts. There has to be a revolutionary and dramatic change in our practices, in our assumptions, and especially in our actions. Now, I'm sure I echo the sentiments of my colleagues who will no doubt speak after me when we say here that we are committed to keep the data of our subjects safe. We are committed to be respectful of how long we keep that data, what we use that data for, who we share it with, and overall, we do not want to have any breaches on our hands. Now, in his wisdom, Professor Thorpe has decided to leave our DPO WhatsApp group open for us, where we can have communication, collaboration. Since we're no longer acting as one person, we're now a team, a large team. So we have to really move forward in realizing that we're all working together to safeguard our data. And I'd like to close with just giving you that reminder that we are indeed the gatekeepers, so we should take our task very seriously. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and all protocols observed. Firstly, I'd like to say, even though I have been asked to speak on behalf of Region 7, the views and opinions expressed here may not be the views or opinions of Region 7. And to avoid any fines or court battle for that matter, Region 7, nor I can guarantee the completeness, lack of bias, or information accuracy as presented in these short sentences. I extend thanks to the Ministry of Education, e-learning, learners, and DPOs here today, the faculty of the University of Technology, specifically Ms. Sharon Leslie, Ms. Tanya Graham, and Professor Sean Thorpe, for at least making us amply aware of the local and global developments with regard to data protection, and at most, preparing us for what is today supposedly the date of compliance to the GDPR. Of course, we must continue to thank Professor Thorpe for his part in the course, being lecturer and tutor, and not to mention his effort to constantly recognize the plethora of virtual hands raised during the classes. Even though the 3-hour sessions took a mixture of lecture and tutorial style delivery, the constant dialogue between the teachers and grasshoppers, who we were, often bore the markings of debate and discussions which surrounded not only content, but consequences and cost. Sorry, this is a legacy hand. The consequences of non-compliance and lack of adherence to data protection standards and laws, partly provided through the Information Commissioner Office, or in Jamaica's case, the Office of Information Commission, as applied to our own individual contexts and Jamaica as a whole, and the cost, mainly salary for the future DPOs who we are now being recognized. This crash course of sorts had us pulling on all our knowledge bases, performing much needed research, collaborating at all levels the communication technology devices would afford us, gaining new friends, associates, and colleagues, and embracing the age-old philosophy espoused by another institution which shall remain nameless, which regards nocturnal activities as inevitable, rendering the act of rest and sleep as a mere figment of one's imagination. I would like to say that the assignments were comprehensive, but given the short period of time within which we had to complete them, our other duties as teachers, administrators, lab technicians, parents, etc., and the fact that I do not have a standard wherewith to measure them, what I can say is that it seems as if they were to the point and drove home the fundamentals necessary upon which to expand the tasks that we will now have to perform. With that said, we cannot overlook some of the sore points. Many of us were concerned about the job description and the function for this new role. We came to understand its gravity and the implications for any action which resulted in failure to comply to these global information protection standards. What concerns us most was the question of why we were being brought into the mix at such a late stage. We felt the timing was poor, late in time for the amount of work that we needed to do, and our concerns were uttered and muttered every day. We were also concerned as to whether or not this new role will now mean new or better money, or an increased salary, I should say. Our professor, of course, and however, continued to reassure us that as at the start of the training, we were to become a team, a community, whose purpose was to support each other through the transition period, if there was one, lightening individuals' loads. We were also worried about the information flow. Many of our supervisors were, and possibly still are, completely oblivious to the need for this new compliance. And this December 1st date has actually become the proverbial D-Day. Finally, I'd like to say that the road ahead of us looks like more work, but again, hats off to our professor and to Ms. Graham. For the continued support which they continue to do beyond the 3 weeks of training. With that said, God bless my fellow DPOs, God bless our facilitators, and God help Jamaica.
Maybe I should have went before him. Again, good evening to everyone, all protocols observed. If I may just start right into it. Thanks. When I actually started this course, it was a case where I was actually in a job feeling a little stagnant and demotivated. And I was actually invited to join this course. When I was invited to join this course, I realized that it will actually help to reshape the way things are done. Not only in my own workspace, but to know that I am a part of a move that will change the way of life for Jamaicans in general. I was completely humbled. Though I had no idea what the conditions for choosing your candidates for training were, I am forever grateful of my place to be in the first batch of the data protection officers in Jamaica. Most evenings, when I logged onto training, I was actually on my way home. As I have witnessed with quite a number of us. Trying to grasp as much as I can while traveling, the delivery of the topics and the ambience of the room was always so engaging. And I must say, I really enjoyed every meeting that I was able to attend. Our professor, hats off to you again, sir. You did a marvelous job. Upon delivery of content, and while each class was for me more of an information overload scenario, I was prepared to do it all over again by the next class, because the relevancy and the urgency of the matter at hand was driven home until it was etched in each of our minds. So, for me going forward, it is a task to get the existing powers at my institution to see the urgency of this matter. But I am confident that I am equipped with the tools and the knowledge to get that institution ready in short notice. I know that once we pull together as a team with one aim, one goal, we can definitely get our schools in order and compliant within the grace period given. We have been trained by the best, and I, for one, believe in giving nothing less. So, on behalf of us at Region 6, we are truly honored, sir. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, the educators. I guess though I can say data protection officers, really. My takeaway from the feedback from your experience is one that you have created a bond as the first batch of students. You've created a bond despite how rigorous, that's what I said, despite how rigorous, the past 3 weeks, has been for you. You have a bond, and I just implore you, please maintain that bond and continue to be there for each other, because as I said earlier, you are indeed trendsetters, and what that means is you are now the go-to for persons who are going to come after you. All right, so just bear that in mind. The moment you are waiting for is when you get your certificates. And so I'm going to now invite, hold on a second, I'm going to invite Miss Graham to join me on stage. But before we go ahead, I just want to point out something. I'm looking for a comment that really got to me. Mr. Francis, Daniel Francis? Yes? Mr. Francis, Moisha Williams, your wife? Yes. She says congratulations. All right? I just wanted to let you know. All right, Miss Graham, please come.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony, Ms. Kimona Gordon. I'd like to acknowledge our Minister of Education, Honorable Favor Williams, the Ms. Terry-Ann Thomas-Gale, Acting Chief Education Officer, our President, Dr. Kevin Brown, our Pro-Chancellor, Professor Sean Thorpe, Dr. Balvin Thorpe, other honorable guests, graduates, congratulations. I will call your names and you will come forward. I'd like to invite the Honorable Favor Williams forward to present these certificates. Mr. Stephen Carr, is Mr. Carr here? I'm going to ask that if you hear one of your colleagues from your region, if you hear the name, I'm going to ask somebody to collect it on their behalf. At the end? Okay. Shanique Williams. Vivian Johnson. Philippa Livingston. I'm not seeing the person. Kay Davidson. Tanya Sinclair. Daniel Francis. Radhika Robbins. Kenardo Henderson. Sylvester Simpson. Melissa Pottinger. Mariah Ho Young. Otis Morgan. Javado Fuller. My apologies. Camille Bodhair. Jacqueline Parkson. Kay Davidson. Giovanni Campbell. Douglas Francis. Baron Richards. Okay. Thank you, Minister. I'd like to invite Mr. Andrew Lee to hand out the next set of certificates. Ewan Simpson. Kadian Heron. You come on. You. Is Kadian Heron here? Oh. Karnet. He's there. Karnet Kolomati. Ferron Latham. Everett Smart. Ricardo Jarrett. Khadijah Green. Julianne Ward. Here. Julianne Ward. Samantha Campbell. Kai Plummer. Franz Myers. Sherry-Ann Manning. Kimara Cousins. Michael Arnold. Christine French Brown. Melissa Brown. Kamal Perry. Denise Edwards. Roland Wilson. Shalmarie Hyatt. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'd like to invite Ms. Terry-Ann Thomas-Gale, Antoinette Wyatt, Andrew Gooden, Leo Lewis, Damario Lennox, Latoya Hodson Smith, Ricardo West, Tanisha Riley Horton, Richard Lawrence, Garth Green, Leon Gordon, just come please, Leon. Timoy White, Dominic Hines, Leon Gordon, the other Leon, Lisa James Richardson, or Lisa, Timoy Miller, Lamar Edgehill, Anita Bailey, Dave Thompson, Carlisle Thompson, Trishana Phillips, oh yes, thank you very much. I'd like to invite, Dr. Thorpe, thank you. Romaine Madden. Rashawn Hodgson. Tamika Mills Johnson. Javed Francis. Aldane Montague. Andre Morgan. Claude Hewitt. Aljamain Sharp. John Paul Panton. Taj Williams. Rena Gay Elwood. Karim Russell. Conroy Donaldson. Carol Ray. Nisha Walker. Chevelle Smith. Bevon Williams. Anthony Dowse. Leroy Rowe. And Marcella Mitchell. Did everybody get their certificate? Is there anyone who did not receive their certificate, who was expecting one? Okay. Thank you very much.
All righty. Mr. Lawrence, where's Mr. Lawrence? Richard Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, Angela Bailey, do you know that person? Right. Your mother says congratulations, sir. Daniel Francis. Where is Daniel? Is it Daniel Francis? Okay. Do you know Miss King? Who is Miss King? Yeah, she says congratulations to you as well. Alrighty, I'm just going through the comments here. And Mr. Cadian Heron, if I got that correctly, Deborah D says congratulations to you too as well. And yeah, oh, is your wife? Yes? Congratulations. All right. Alrighty. Oh, yes, there's a Gary Harrison here. Mr. Harrison is saying, big up to Professor Thorpe, of course. So, Professor Thorpe, big up to you. All right? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some gift baskets here. And we would not be, e-Learning Jamaica Company Limited if we never... and UTech, if we didn't really recognize some persons. So, with that being said, I am going to invite Mr. Lee to join me on stage, please. And Mr. Lee, you will be presenting the Minister of Education and Youth with this, please. Minister? Professor Thorpe, I'm going to ask for you to join me on stage, please, sir. No, give Professor Thorpe. Yeah, Professor Thorpe, yes. And I'm going to ask Ms. Terrian Thomas Gill to join me on stage, please. Thank you so much, Professor Thorpe. Dr. Kevin Brown, can you join me on stage, please? And I'm going to ask Miss Tanya Graham to join us on stage. Yes, thank you. All right, I'm a little bit biased for this one, and I think it's accepted. I'm going to ask Miss Michelle Babelel to join me on stage, please. And this one is going to be very special for me. I'm going to ask Mr. Andrew Lee to join us on stage, please. You're welcome. Mr. McNabb, please join us on stage, please, sir. And I'm going to ask, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, Professor Thorpe to join us on stage, please. And Miss Marion Brown, please to join us on stage, please. And Dr. Balvin Thorpe, please join us on stage, please. All right, so before we get into the vote of thanks, I'm still going through the comments on our YouTube platform. And Mr. Bevan Williams, where are you, Mr. Williams? Yes, your sister Susan Williams says congratulations to you. All right. And I see congratulations going out to Mr. Lennox. Of course, congratulations to you, sir. And Deborah D, she's saying thanks to Mr. Thorpe. That made it so engaging. So I take it that she is making reference to, of course, the the workshop that you all did. And congrats to Mrs. Lessa Richardson, and that's coming from Althea Richardson. Congratulations to you two again. All right, I am now going to invite Kamal Perry to move the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It has been such an honor to be here to be a part of this wonderful event. And on behalf of the organization, University of Technology, and I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guest, the Honorable Favour Williams, MP, Minister of Education and Youth, Ms. Terry-Ann Thomas Gale, Acting Chief Education Officer, Mr. Andrew Lee from eLearning, Chief Executive Officer Dr. Kevin Brown, UTech President President Kevin Brown, and Professor Sean Thorpe, Dean of Faculty of Engineering and Computing, and our other distinguished guests. I thank you for attending. Now, for a sincere thanks to all the various departments, the cleaners, our presenters, our cameramen, I'd like to express thanks for being here to make this event possible, as well as my fellow graduates, classmates, DPOs. Congratulations, we've made it. So give a round of applause. It was a hard one, but not impossible. For the nights and the weekends that we stayed up late and were doing our assignments, I thought to myself, well, you know, at the end, I'd just like to see a couple of persons I've seen in the chats, like Roland Wilson and Mr. Plummer. I need to have a word with you after this. But thank you all for being here, for making us feel special, and for any additional work we're going to get after this. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perry. And that brings our event to an end, ladies and gentlemen. It was indeed... Okay, sure, not a problem. It was indeed a pleasure to have served you this evening. Professor Thorpe is saying that he needs a group picture, so of course, I'm going to ask for all participants to, make your way to the front for you. Okay, all right, not a problem. So I'm sure we'll organize that. Oh, and with that being said, I will be approaching some of you. We would, of course, love your feedback on video, and this is, specifically for social media purposes. So I'm putting that out there now, hoping that, I have your permission to do that. Yes, it will be on, our social media platforms as well as, our website. So I'm putting it out there, please, I hope. Sure. Okay, come forward and fill up the seats. So we'll start from, let's say, the second row. While we're filling out, of course, let me extend thank you to Ms. Leslie for assisting in organizing today's event. Thank you, Ms. Leslie. I also want to say thank you to the Jamaica Information Service, for facilitating us online. Thanks again to GIS and to the team. Okay, and once we're through, refreshments is on the outside, so please feel free to engage.